You're tuning into The Josh Bernstein Show, where liberalism is a mental disorder. And Josh is the cure.
So I get a call from one of the reporters yesterday, and they said, the president of Mexico said they will not, under any circumstances, pay for the wall. What is your comment? I said, the wall just got 10 feet higher.
So what could be the answer here? The experts that we spoke to say the way to go is pre-casted cement wall panels. Those panels would be lined side by side, sort of like what you might see on a highway. Each panel would be about 20 feet high, again 5 feet below ground, about 10 feet wide and 8 inches thick. Again, that wall would be stretching some 2,000 miles, and our expert says it would require 339 million cubic feet of concrete. And that's just for the panels. You're also going to need reinforced steel, at least 5 billion pounds. So what about the estimated cost? Because it hasn't been done before, let's use those highway panels as an example. They cost about $40 a square foot. That would end up costing about $10.5 billion. Sounds like a lot of money, is a lot of money. But again, remember, Donald Trump says the U.S. government wouldn't end up footing the bill on this one. It would be Mexico.
Welcome to another hard-hitting edition of the Josh Bernstein Show. The Josh Bernstein Show starts where the rest of the media ends. Now, I started today's show with the clip of Donald Trump and also showing how we could actually build the fence. Now, this election cycle, especially on the Republican side, we have seen unconventionality. We have seen a second place person in Ted Cruz nominating someone to be the vice president as a last minute hope and prayer. We have seen people talking about people's hand sizes. We've seen yelling and shouting. We've seen Little Marco and Low Energy Jeb and Lion Ted and now Crooked Hillary. So we've seen a very unconventional, bold and brash race to this point. Now we're up against Hillary Clinton, and we're up against the Hillary Clinton machine. Could she be indicted? I don't know. That would be the best case scenario. But assuming that she's not, she's going to pick someone as the VP to try to strengthen her ticket. I have called and said that it more than likely would be Julian Castro. I could be wrong, and if I am, well, I'm sure that he's going to be in the final running. I've now heard that it could be Bernie Sanders because they need the youth vote, because the youth do not like Hillary, and they need to be able to coalesce at that. Now, we've also heard reports that Bernie Sanders and his supporters do not like Hillary Clinton, and there's a fracture. And it's so funny that the media spent so much time talking about this unicorn contested convention when they really should have had the forthright to see that the Democrat situation is much more fractured, at least at this point. And maybe they'll be the ones that'll have the contested convention. But getting back on track and getting back on point here. You know, when Donald Trump announced his presidency, everyone saw a billionaire businessman who would created jobs. He's created tens of thousands of jobs. He's built magnificent architecture structures all around the world. So naturally, you would think of him as the jobs president. But in his announcement speech, that all changed. When he said that we need to build a wall, we need to close down the border because Mexico is sending its rapists and murderers across the border. That was the big uproar. So what happened is the supposedly jobs president all of a sudden now turned into the border control presidential candidate. And rightfully so, because you cannot have jobs if Americans can't get jobs because illegal aliens are here taking all their jobs. So naturally, the American electorate was smart enough to understand that he can't be the jobs president until he is the border enforcement president. So he shot up to the lead because of these comments, because he was saying things that Washington politicians saw as dangerous or just flat out would never say. And that's why Donald Trump has risen to the top. That's why he's won this nomination. And hopefully, if we can get this party together, will be the next president of the United States. Now, what's interesting is that when he called to build the wall, a lot of people were shocked. They said, well, wait a minute, you can't build a wall. We don't build walls. We have open borders. And all the Republicans said, oh, you can't build the wall and this and that. But he said, I'm going to build the wall. And then his famous line, Mexico is going to pay for it. That's why I started the show with those clips. And it truly can be done. The wall can be built. Now, what I want to do is I want to talk about something. And because of the unconventionalness of this election and how bold and brash Donald Trump has been, one of the things that he said is that all these politicians are all talk and no action. And he's said it over and over and over again against every one of the 17 people that tried to take him down. Well, what if, being that this is such an unconventional election cycle, what if Donald Trump started to build the wall now? That's right. What if he started to build the wall now? What if he became the action border enforcement presidential candidate, as he says he will be when he's elected? You know, we've heard stories that he may change his tune, flexibility. Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to do all this. You know what? That's scaring some voters away. So what I would say to the Trump campaign is put the Obama administration on its heels, show the American people that your campaign promises are real, and start building the fence now. And I believe I'm the only person in the media that I know of that is calling for Donald Trump to start building the fence now. Now, logistics. How can this be done? Well, there's 1,989 miles of the border. In 2006, Congress passed the Secure Fence Act. And in the Secure Fence Act, it was supposed to erect 700 miles of double-pane border fencing, steel construction border fencing. Well, if you've seen any pictures of the border now, it is not. It's chicken wire in most places. It's you know, those seahorse wooden things set up that are 2.5 to 3 feet high that anyone could just pop over. There are some areas with the metal steel, but certainly not enough. So Congress lied to you. It lied to the American people. It said what it wanted to say. You contacted Congress. You said, build the fence. Congress listened, but they didn't listen. They gave you a wink, wink, and a nod, nod. And when you weren't looking, they decided to take the funding for the fence and appropriate it for other things. Now, they say that they're going to build the fence, but they never built the fence. So here's the bottom line. You've got 700 miles, 652 miles exactly of fencing being built. There's still another 337 miles that needed to be built, including double pane steel wall construction. Well, that was never built. So this is why the border is a sieve. This is why we find ourselves. Now, how can Donald Trump build this now? Well, Texas is 1,254 miles of the entire 1,989 mile border, okay? There's only about 100 miles of total fencing in the entire state of Texas. That is just ridiculous when you think about it. The three biggest areas that illegal aliens cross are in El Paso, Texas, Douglas, Arizona, and El Centro, California. Now, again, if you look at this from a standpoint of how Donald Trump can do this, it's fairly reasonably easy because of the fact that the people that live on the border in the respective states of California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas are being run over. Their properties are being run over. Their cattle are being killed. Their crops are being taken. They're being held at gunpoint in some cases if they don't allow people to come across their property. They're being mugged. There's smugglers coming through their property. There's been many ranchers that have had to defend themselves against the drug cartels and the coyotes. It's an absolute mess. So here's what Donald Trump does, and here's why this would work. Back in the George W. Bush administration, we had a defense secretary named Michael Chertoff. Michael Chertoff contacted about 600 private landowners in the state of Texas. And after contacting them and asking them would you allow the government to build a fence on your property? 2/3 of those 600 landowners said absolutely. You couldn't build it fast enough, okay? The other third or so said it would depend on how much money you're going to give me for my property, and I would want more than market value, or at least market value. Chertoff then said, no way, we're not giving you more than market value. And 10% of the people that were contacted said absolutely not, and they refused. So what if Donald Trump reached out to these landowners in the 4 respective states, found out who they were, contacted them, had his people contact them and say, look, I want to build and erect a fence that goes through your property on the southern border, and I'm willing to pay you money for your land for the use to do this, or buy your property for you at market value, or whatever it is, compensate you in some way. The majority of the people that own private property down there would be more than happy to do this, because they understand the failure of the federal government protecting people from coming across. So why doesn't Donald Trump do this? Contact these people and start building the fence now. Think about what that would do to the Obama administration. They would lose their mind knowing that Donald Trump started building the fence now. And they're allowed to do it. He'd be allowed to do it because it's privately owned property. Obama administration can't do anything about that. So that's what Donald Trump should do. And another reason he should do it, it would virtually guarantee him the win in November, because it would take his talk and turn it into real action. If anybody in the Trump campaign is out there, you need to start building the fence now. Another thing I said a while back is when we had the Brussels attack and Obama was nowhere to be found, I said Donald Trump should have flown to Brussels and talked to the people and did a speech right in front of everybody in Brussels to show real, true leadership. Donald Trump is unconventional. He's bold and he's brass. It's time that he takes some of these different things and goes out there and executes instead of being all talk and no action. Because the people are afraid that you're running one way and maybe when you get elected you're not going to do some of these things. Well, how do you quell those fears? How do you unite the party? How do you get the conservative base that doesn't want to vote for you on board? Build the fence now. That's how you do it. And again, the Josh Bernstein Show is to give advice, commentary, political analysis, and talk about things that nobody else is talking about. That's why the hundreds of thousands of people love to watch the show. So how does it break down? Well, you've got some natural borders with the Rio Grande. You got about 300 miles of the Rio Grande, so there's some natural borders there. The terrain itself, in some areas, about 150 to 200 miles or so, is a natural border in itself. So it boils down to this. You need about 934 miles of fencing in Texas. You need 179 miles of fencing in New Mexico. You need 140 miles of fencing in California. And you need to finish the 370 miles that was supposed to be done in the Secure Fence Act of 2006. 370 miles of fencing done in Arizona. That's a total of 1,623 miles of fencing needed. And this whole thing about Mexico to pay for it, it sounds great, and who knows, maybe he was able to do it. But at this point, who cares? He's a billionaire. Have him pay for it. That's what I would do. And if it's not Mexico paying for it, so what? So he broke a campaign promise. Big deal. He just built 1,600 miles of double-forced steel construction fencing to stop the flow of illegal aliens. I think we can forgive him for that. So that's what I suggest that he does. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back.
You're tuning into the Josh Bernstein Show, where Josh covers the news the way the liberal media would not dare.
Hey, Josh Bernstein here. If you like that segment, please tune in to the full show at starworldwidenetworks.com. Again, starworldwidenetworks.com. Look for the Josh Bernstein Show, or you can also find me on YouTube. I appreciate you guys watching.